All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible rules that literally shape the world around us. We're talking about zoning permits. Now, I know that sounds a little dry, but trust me, these are the legal documents that decide what gets built, where it gets built, and why. By the end of this, you are going to see your own city in a completely new light. I mean, have you ever really thought about it? Why is there a beautiful park on one corner, a giant skyscraper on another, and then a quiet street with single-family homes in between? The answer, almost every single time, comes down to zoning. So to really get how it works, let's follow the story of someone who's trying to build something new. So to get our heads around this, we're going to follow the journey of a hypothetical person. Let's just call them the applicant. They have a dream. They want to build something. But before they can even think about laying a single brick, they have to face the music of zoning itself. So what is it really? Well, put simply, zoning is the official rulebook for a community. It's a local law that organizes how every single piece of land can be used. You can think of it as the master plan that, keeps a noisy factory from popping up right next to an elementary school. And at its very core, zoning is a balancing act. It's this constant push and pull between two big ideas. On one hand, your right as a person to do what you want with your property, and on the other hand, the community's interest in having a town that's safe, makes sense, and is sustainable. It's always a negotiation between a personal dream and a collective plan. Okay, so our applicant has their dream. The next step? They have to figure out the specific rules for their piece of land. Because, as they're about to learn, no property is a blank slate. Not even close. And their very first stop is the zoning map. This thing is the official, legally binding guide that shows exactly how every single lot in a city is categorized. It's basically the treasure map that tells you what you can, and more importantly, what you can't build. Now, when you look at that map, you'll see it's carved up into different zones. The three main types you'll always see are residential, for houses and apartments, commercial, for stores and offices, and industrial, for things like factories and warehouses. And inside each of these zones, a whole new set of super specific rules kicks in. One of the most common rules our applicant is going to run into is something called the setback. This rule dictates exactly how far back from the property line, or the street, or maybe even a stream, their building has to sit. The easiest way to think about it is like this. A setback is basically a mandatory personal space bubble, but for buildings. It's a pretty simple rule, but it's what ensures everyone has a little bit of breathing room and that neighborhoods feel open instead of cramped. Next up on the checklist, our applicant has to think about density. These are the rules that control just how much you can build on a piece of land. For instance, how many apartments can you fit per acre? And let me tell you, this has huge consequences, and it's often at the very center of all those heated debates about housing affordability and what we want our neighborhoods to feel like. Okay, so our applicant has studied the map, they've read the rules. Now for the fun part, the paperwork. This is where the dream starts to get real and become a formal plan. And, well, it's often called a gauntlet for a pretty good reason. Let's look at what that journey looks like. Generally, the process goes something like this. First, you submit your super detailed application and all your architectural plans. Second, you have to provide a justification, basically an essay explaining how your project is good for the community. Third, of course, you pay the fees. And fourth, you wait for the government to review everything. And here is an absolutely crucial piece of advice: the quality of that application. How clear it is, how complete, how professional can make or break the whole thing. It is the single best way to avoid massive delays and seriously increase your chances of getting that green light. But the journey isn't just about paperwork, not by a long shot. Now, our applicant's plan has to meet the public. This is the part where the community gets to have its say. For a lot of projects, a public hearing is a required step. This is a formal meeting where your neighbors and other people in the community can actually show up. They can support the project, or they can raise some serious concerns. It's a really core part of the democratic process in city planning. This is a fantastic question because, let's be honest, it happens all the time. What if the lot you own is shaped so weirdly that it's just impossible to meet the setback rule? Or what if your idea is just a little different for the neighborhood? Well, this is where you might ask for a kind of escape hatch. There are two main types you've got to know. A variance is what you ask for when a rule creates a unique hardship because of something specific about your property. Then there's an exception, which is for special kinds of projects that the rules already say are okay, but only if they meet certain conditions. Now, to add another wrinkle to all this, our applicant might run into something called a non-conforming use. This is basically an old building or business that was perfectly legal when it was first built, but it doesn't fit the zoning rules we have today. Usually, it's allowed to stay, but there are often a lot of restrictions on it. So, after navigating all the rules, conquering the mountain of paperwork, and maybe surviving a public hearing or two, our applicant finally gets to the finish line, the decision. And there it is, government approval. The source material calls this the yield of the process, which I think is a great way to put it. This is the permit itself, the official piece of paper that gives you legal permission to finally turn that dream into a reality, just as long as you follow all the attached conditions. So let's zoom all the way out. Why does any of this matter? Because zoning is how we try to balance those private dreams with the public good. It's how a city's big, abstract plans actually become real buildings and parks on the ground. It helps protect the environment, it shapes the entire economic and social feel of a community, and it helps manage the costs of new development. And that's because zoning isn't just one thing. It's this amazing intersection point where city planning, the law, environmental protection, and individual property rights all collide and get negotiated. So when you boil it all down, it's really this simple. Zoning permits are the tools that determine what our world actually looks like. They are the invisible blueprint for our neighborhoods, our towns, and our cities, which really leaves us with one final big question to think about. As our world continues to grow and change, are we building that blueprint the right way?